Hi, my name is Miles Beach. This is my final presentation for CHS 211. So, to start off, my research question is: how is the prevalence of obesity affected by sports participation in youth? How does sports participation alter the diets of the youth, and how does this diet lead to higher rates of obesity? Well, to answer this question, Robert W. Turner did a test for high school students, not only athletes, but all high school students, and he found that males who do not participate in sports are obese 23.6% of the time, while participants in any sports have a 16.6% rate of obesity. This is only in men. So that's a 7% difference in participating and not participating. He also found that participants in women who do not participate in sports are obese 17% of the time, but are only obese 15.3% of the time while participating in sports. This is much less significant than the men, so it's only a 1.7% difference, but it still answers the question in a much less significant way. Then the second part of my question is about diet and how diet is affected. So, in short, sugar sweetened beverages are consumed heavily by those who participate in sports. It's branded. Gatorade is the biggest brand of food I can think of, and they just brand it as a sports drink, which is complete fabrication. It's not true, yada yada yada, but it is what is consumed most with sports. And these sugar sweetened beverages contribute to weight gain because they do not compensate from meals, but they have the same calories as meals and they have the same sugar content as whole days should have. So that contributes to weight gain, and weight gain is in the definition of obesity, which is body mass index score over 30. Um, so yeah, to start, the reason why I studied this topic is because I know, or it is a known fact, that obesity rates are increasing at abnormally fast rates. But my philosophy is that if you cut the supply of something, that it should eventually stop. And so if you stop children from who are obese from becoming adults who are obese and then living their lives as obese, you can create a situation where there are less and less obese, or the obese diagnoses are decreasing. And so that's kind of what I believe is the best solution to tackle obesity, is just cut off its roots. And so something that my article does that other articles don't is that it adds a guideline for guardians and schools to use to allow children to experience all sports. And I believe one of my assumptions is that children will eventually find a passion if they experience all sports. And so, what other methods don't do is essentially the opposite. They don't offer methods to encourage children. They do not have solutions for guardians to use on their children. So they only talk about that there is an issue, that it does need to be fixed, and they don't say how, why, or how really. And so that's what this article does. It focuses results wise on kind of answering the questions that are in the research question, but then the discussion focuses on methods or solutions that can be implemented in schools and by guardians. So one of my first assumptions is that habits are formed when you're a child. And so this really doesn't say anything about that, but it does talk about how if you're habituated to drinking Gatorade after a game, will eventually become it's a habit, as the definition of habituation is. So if you do the same with healthy alternatives, that those will become habits, and that children will enjoy doing them, and then when they become independent, that they will, instead of going towards a Gatorade bottle, they go towards a water bottle. This is all stuff that would just lead to less diagnoses of obesity. My second assumption is that school programs are willing to be manipulated and can be manipulated. So, from my middle school and elementary school experience, P was once a week in elementary school, usually involved running, We played kickball a few times, but no serious sports were played. And then in middle school, they really let you play more sports, but I grew up in the suburbs of a rich white neighborhood. There was no there was no fighting for large spaces. There were multiple fields to play on. It wasn't like we were in a urban city where there isn't much room, maybe a basketball gym, but there's no field like to go out and play. So this is focusing on schools who have that ability, and schools mostly in more poor areas where sports equipment is kind of the limiting factor. My third assumption is that if all children experience all sports they can experience, they'll eventually find one that they're passionate for. Now, this is not true. Some kids or some people, really in general, just don't like sports. They grew up not liking them. They never liked them. They never will like them. Completely fine. This is not a paper that can really affect them, but that is something that I did not really account for, which I should have. But one of the issues with that is that I still believe that every child, especially younger and not adults really per se, but a child who experiences every sense of competition and every sense of camaraderie that sports can provide, they'll eventually find one that they're passionate for. So to erase bias for this, I tried to choose a topic of sports participation where I was not involved. So I am the youngest child in my family. I am not planning on having children anytime soon. So the fact that this is sports participation but focusing on children makes me not invested in it. I'm still an athlete, don't get me wrong. I love to play sports, but I also don't play them for weight management. I play them for the joy of the game. I don't play them because I'm looking to maintain a healthy BMI, which is what a lot of children should test for. I mean, I also try to avoid points where I could not be biased or could be biased. So what I mean by that is I try to avoid points where I say this sport is better than this sport in helping children maintain a healthy BMI, which there are some that are made for people who are more fit in general because some sports require heavier individuals, more muscle mass, more weight in general. Um, and I don't specifically say which one's better because you could be 17 and still be having baby fat, and playing football is better than playing, I don't know, swimming. So that's kind of what I try to focus on, is not including including information that could affect every single body type, every single sport athlete, every single passion. And so where I believe I'm most rhetoric, or what I believe rhetoric is persuasion, is that in the results section I don't say which is better, which sport is better, but I do say sports are in general good for obesity rates, which could be considered rhetoric, but I'm focusing on which sport is better. And in the discussion section, I kind of talk about what guardians and schools should do and how they could do it to allow for children, especially younger children in elementary school and middle school, to participate in all kinds of sports. And so my implications for this is in schools and with adults, with people raising children, guardians. And so what I recommend is that schools create programs such as a physical education class, where they can essentially make children experience every single sport in a safe environment with children their own age, where there's a sense of competition, camaraderie, and they eventually will find which one they enjoy, which they can then focus on in high school, and so on. Enhancing programs is something that schools need to do. Some schools can't afford to buy sports equipment like balls, like soccer balls, like basketball gyms, or any of that stuff. But the way I found a solution around that is donations, donations, donations. If a adult has a basketball they don't use, boom, you just got a basketball. And then also on donations is you actually have to spend more money on sports, which is something that a lot of people can't do, but it's something that I believe there needs to be a focus on. And then from a parent standpoint, I say you can't force a child to play a sport. And I don't believe my parents did that. I don't believe anybody's parents I know have done that, but it's still something I wanted to say because children will reluctantly do something because of their parents, yeah, but they'll never invest themselves. They'll never grow a passion for that. They'll never love what they do, but they'll just do it reluctantly and they'll just keep doing it because their parents want them to do it and they see joy in their parents' eyes. But that is not something I really like. So that essentially is everything. Thank you for listening. Bye.